So this story that's been blowing up on social media about Silo Hendrix, who used the N-word and called a toddler something along those lines, and has gone on to raise hundreds and thousands of dollars on GiveSendGo, is not only garnering a lot of attention, it's almost turned into some kind of a tribal collective race war on the crowdfunding platforms. It really is quite crazy how two sides can be arguing their point and sort of explain it away in such different ways. One is an aggressor, one is supposedly in a defensive stance, and it's all coming down to power and money. I was gonna cover it through doing a reaction to this Piers Morgan story where he had Miron Gaines and what's me call it, let me try and remember his name. What's his name again now? Is it Lamont Hill? Excuse me. I have to get that cleared up. Anyway, so they were on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show as part of the panel with these two ladies arguing the pros and cons of this whole tribal thing that's been growing on the crowdsourcing platforms, and also whether, from Piers Morgan's perspective anyway, these platforms should take a more controlling position when it comes to freedom of speech. Should they allow somebody to become almost a millionaire off of causing controversy? And on the other side, with the case with the young man who unalived the other young man at the sports meet, what makes people donating to him any more acceptable? So I was going to watch this with you, Piers Morgan show video, and then I came across Greg Foreman breaking down in a very succinct and clear, logical manner, as he normally does, the very same said show. So I figured, let's just take it from the Greg Foreman breakdown and let's watch this thing together. As he would say, without any further ado, let's go.
When it comes to this woman saying the N-word, and this other woman endorsing it and saying that she herself uses the N-word, now all of a sudden we can only talk about the Constitution and the legal right. We can't offer any moral judgment against it. That's disingenuous, and it's as the only Black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want,
hey, sorry to chop in here. I don't get how Hill is saying he's the only African American up there. So what's Miron Gaines? He's Black American of Sudanese heritage. Sudan is a part of Africa. He's an African American.
to be soft and get offended by that, that's your problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky,
this isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak and then I'll let you respond. Myron, sure. I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here.
A few moments later.
Mark Lamont Hill, I stand corrected.
Want unashamedly, and you will.
Well, go
not
on then,
have
say
free
it. Say
you
the
will
M.
not have
Go on,
free
say.
speech.
Go on, say the M word. Go on.
No.
Don't
invite. No.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got.
He went crazy at that point. I saw this debate discussion yesterday, and this was towards the end of the show. He just completely lost it. And yes, Piers Morgan was baiting the lady. Obviously, it's good for ratings on this show. Get an explosive moment like that. But Mark Lamont Hill just jumped out of his cot, feet first.
That's disingenuous, and it's as the only Black American up here, that's quite frustrating to hear.
Here's the thing. If you want to be soft and get offended by that, that's your problem, not mine.
Let me ask Ricky.
We're not even.
Let me ask Ricky. Ricky, I want to.
This isn't about being soft any more than when you were desperately saving these white people.
Hold on. This sensitive nature that you have is precisely why we have this problem.
It's not about being sensitive. It's about I
had to drop that in. Just one.
I didn't articulate. Hold on. Let me finish, Myron. Let me speak, and then I'll let you respond. Myron, I didn't articulate any sensitivity here. What I said, in the same way that you levied a judgment against Black people, I'm levying one against the claims you're making. I'm no more sensitive than you were when you made your claim. I'm simply saying I disagree with you. And to immediately jump to you're being sensitive is just a distraction. I'm making an argument here.
A few moments later.
I want unashamedly, and you will
well, go
not
on then,
have
say
free,
it. Say
you
the
will
M.
not have
Go on,
free
say.
speech.
Go on, say the M word. Go on.
No.
Hang
Don't invite. No.
No.
I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about a wild segment on Piers Morgan show involving Piers himself, Miron Gaines, Mark Lamont Hill, Lily Gaddis, and this other chick whose name I don't really know, but that's okay because she's not really that relevant to this conversation and the clip that I'm going to react to, because Mark Lamont Hill is going to absolutely lose his mind during this segment after Piers dares Lily Gaddis to say the N-word. Now, I have to give you guys some proper context before I play this clip here, this epic clip, probably one of the best clips on the internet, to be honest with you, behind what was said leading up to this explosion, okay? Lily Gaddis is...
I mean, it's really funny. When you get down to the meats and gravy of it, as Greg Foreman is going to later in the video, he does lay it out in a more serious and well thought out way. So let's proceed.
Supporting the white woman, Shiloh Hendricks, who is going viral due to the fact that she allegedly called this Black child an N-word, okay? And even though she didn't really call the child an N-word on camera, she did say the N-word multiple times in the video after the guy was basically chasing her around over her calling the child an N-word. And she basically said that the child had touched her child's stuff.
See, I in no way kind of agree with that. What kind of gets me a little twisted is you have this very same said N-word dropped on, I don't know how much, what the percentages of rap records or hood movies or most of the things that is associated with Black urban culture, you hear the N-word.
Take her child's stuff, and that's why she did it, okay? And, you know, the dude...
I'm not saying that non-Black people can run around throwing it out there willy-nilly out of context. It's not a shocking word to most.
That was recording the video wanted her to go viral, right? Let's make her go viral. And she went viral, and it kind of backfired because she raised a whole lot of money. And now a lot of people are upset, right? They're upset because she has basically raised a bunch of money for saying the N-word.
Why would you want to support a white racist?
Because I want to support free speech, and you cannot have free speech in a country.
No, that's fine. You can support free speech.
See, that is a valid point. With this social media, news media, public arena, having your point of view, expressing your truth, or, you know, however you want to describe it, you either take it as it comes or don't take anything at all. Free speech is never going to be about hearing just things that you like. And obviously, it gets to a point if people are inciting certain destructive behaviors and actions, that's something else. Just giving your point of view or expressing something in your particular way that may come across as offensive to someone on the receiving end, it appears to me that's part of what freedom of speech is.
But you also have to be accountable for what you say. She is, I mean, would you use the N-word out of interest?
Yes.
You would?
Hmm. I do quite frequently.
You use the N-word quite frequently. Well, why? Other than the fact you're a despicable racist. Are you?
Some would say I am.
I don't agree with her necessarily, although I'd rather someone like that so you know who's in the room with you than somebody who's smiley face, I'm in your corner, I'm on a what do they call them? Not an activist. I'm somebody who says, yeah, I'm supporting your cause, when beneath it all they're harboring those kind of expressions. Ally, that's the word I was looking for. I'm of a certain age. We do experience a certain degree of brain fog, especially in the early hours. No, ally. I'd rather somebody who's kind of like, they're prepared to stand on their beliefs and clarify their position. And, like I said, who you're in the room with. You don't have to break bread with them, or associate or whatever. But when people are deceptive, to me, that's even worse.
I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, well, if you use the N-word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you? Are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendricks is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Carmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N-word? When would it be appropriate?
Which black people does she use it with?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendricks?
I mean, little pushback. I have to say, with Piers Morgan, though, he does have a selective kind of take on freedom of speech. And also, he's good at what he does. He knows how to bait his guests.
Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Yeah, so you see, now you heard that, okay? Clearly, Piers Morgan is triggered by this. Which, again, is what kind of led up to this explosion from Mark Lamont Hill that I think is absolutely glorious. It is one of the best clips that I've seen in a long, long, long time. So without further ado, let's get into this.
The thing with it's a natural human instinct. Like, we are literally designed to want to be in communities and want to be a part of a set of community because it ensures our survival. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So the thing is that people are typically going to align with people that share similar features, and that's why we have the tribalism we have going on right now. So the problem is it's not going to go anywhere. I think the problem is that we've had this penting up for literally decades, and this has been a response to it. You have people that are coming out and supporting someone who you guys might deem as a terrible racist, but I think it's also very important to understand how we got here, because if we're going to look at the smaller problem, we can't look at the bigger problem. And it's what I said before, unchecked systemic.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, your last words on this.
This repeated use of the word, I think, first of all, I want to just register that as offensive, particularly as someone who doesn't identify as a member of that community and who is not, right? I think that's incredibly.
I just don't get this thing why he keeps alluding to Miron Gaines as not being, or saying that he doesn't identify as part of the community in question, which is the black community that Mark Lamont Hill identifies as being part of. I've always seen Miron Gaines on Fresh and Fit and other shows where he shows up, giving his point of view as a black American, African American, until this show, hearing the way Mark Lamont Hill has described him. Good for the goose, good for the gander.
I'm the definition of African American. I'm the definition of African American.
And troublesome, and to as a Sudanese American or an outsider who's using African American in a very technical term, the same way that Elon Musk is an African American, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But the bigger issue here, I think, is that this idea of equating of one side to the other side often loses track of this issue of power. To use his example, when black people stand up and say, "Hey, let's build our own stuff. Hey, let's have a black power movement," that is not the same as a white power. I'll let you speak uninterrupted. Let me finish, please, my Sudanese brother. So when a black person says, "Hey, let's preserve our culture," I have no problem with Italians or Irish people or anyone else saying, "Let's preserve our culture." But when we don't talk about ethnicity, but actual race, and when white people say, "Let's preserve whiteness," it's an exclusionary practice. It's about preserving laws and practices and tactics that do harm to other people. A black power movement was about opening stores and building businesses. A white power movement.
So much propaganda. I can't wait for you to get to the breakdown from Greg Foreman later in the video, because Mark Hill in the month just quite one-sided take.
Was it a white power? That's the giga. A white power movement was about something very, 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 very different. A white power movement included lynchings and included Ku Klux Klan, etc. So let's not pretend that these are opposite sides of the same coin. When white people say, "Let's save our country," and even using the language of our country, when black people built this thing, when you say that, you're talking about forcing people out of the country. You're talking about laws that discriminate. You're talking about doing harm to people. Let's not pretend these are the same thing, just like these GoFundMe campaigns are not the same thing. I'm okay if everybody gets out of the GoFundMe industrial complex. I'd love that. But let's not pretend that supporting someone for a fair trial is the same thing as supporting a grown white woman berating and calling the N-word to a 5-year-old autistic black child. And the fact that everyone in here can't be unanimous in condemning that says exactly how they're not the same.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so I disagree with Mark Lamont Hill heavily, right? On almost damn near everything that he said, okay? Because these woke people, right? It's so funny because they'll call other people disingenuous while at the same time they'll turn around and make disingenuous arguments and try to pretend as if black power and white power are not about the same thing. When they are about the same thing. They're about power, okay? Because they fundamentally, right, when it comes down to what the quote unquote white power movement is about and the quote unquote black power movement is about, what they do, okay? It's the same thing. Like, for example, if black people say, "Hey, we want to shop at only black-owned businesses. We want to support black banks. We only want to have our dollars be spent."
It will be called segregation and, black supremacy or something along those lines. Just in the same way, if white people wanted to separate themselves in that type of way, it would be called white supremacists.
With other black people, if possible. That is a part of the black economic empowerment movement, right? The black power movement. That in and of itself is exclusionary. That is exclusionary of whites. You're saying that, hey, we're going to purposely discriminate against whites. Why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that for power, okay? Which is the same reason why a similar movement involving white people would do the same thing. They say, no, we want white-only spaces. We want to shop at white-only businesses. We want to bank with white banks. Well, again, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that for power. It's the same thing. It's been done for the same exact purpose. Now, the reason why white people are not allowed to do that is because if white people collectively started doing that, if they started acting in a discriminatory way, then that would be really bad for everybody else in society, because white people are the majority, right? They're the majority. And because they are the majority, then they have a majority of the wealth. And it would be really bad if white people started openly discriminating against black people, black businesses, or any non-white business. That would be really bad economically for everybody else. But again, everybody else is allowed to do that, right? They're allowed to engage in that type of discrimination due to the fact that they are seen as having less power. So my whole point here is that I don't think that Mark Lamont Hill is being 100% honest when it comes to this conversation about why this is different, why the quote unquote white power and black power is different. At the end of the day, they fundamentally want the same thing. They want power. The only difference is that white people are seeing as having power, and they've been successful at maintaining power, right? And black people haven't. But there is no moral objection to discrimination or tribalism or any type of racial movement that attempts to accumulate power, because Mark Lamont Hill has no issue with the black power movement. His objection to white power really comes from the fact that white people, in his eyes, are seen as more powerful. They're the more powerful group. So therefore, that type of politics is dangerous towards minorities because of the fact that they already have the power. So again, I just want people to understand, there's no moral objection here. It is simply an objection to white people engaging in tribalism, because it's really about allowing minorities to eventually gain more power over white people at the expense of white people. That's what it's about. And they will guilt trip you as a white person for engaging in quote unquote white identity politics, not because they have some moral objection or some principle objection to identity politics and tribalism. No, it's because that type of tribalism in their eyes is extremely dangerous, exemplified by what's happening with this whole Shiloh Hendrix thing, right? They're terrified of that. They're terrified of white people acting as a collective. But what these people don't understand is that if you don't want white people acting as a collective, starting to see themselves as white and to identify as white and to engage in white identity politics, then you probably should be doing that for other minorities, especially considering how now is basically white versus non-white, right? All of the so-called minorities have come together and said, we're people of color and we're going to engage in anti-white politics.
One people.
Yeah, what do you think that's going to lead to? What do you think that's going to lead to? Especially when we live in a country where the white population is declining, okay? And people are legitimately looking at our country and saying, hey, this is not a country that it used to be. It's not a country that it used to be.
Listen, just in parallel, these things are happening over here in the UK, almost in a mirrored like for like way. Okay, we haven't got similar cases in the courts or the media at the moment. When it comes to the collectivism, the tribalism, and certain groups of white people looking at people of color and saying, particularly in the immigration department, say these people are coming over here and getting this and getting that and we're struggling. Excuse me. They've been using this term two-tier policing in relation to the during the Palestine-Israel protests, and then again during the summer of love, or should we say summer of no love, over here, when there was a small amount of rioting just when Labour came into power. It's a similar thing. It's tribalism, collectivism, and one particular group that's probably quite fed up, and now they're starting to voice and express themselves, and it won't end well.
And they're being told that you can't say anything about it, right? You can't express yourself unless you're racist, right? You're racist if you're not okay with what's currently happening to the country. That's not good. And this is why you can either have all of it or none of it. And I say this all the time on this channel, especially when I talk about the N-word and stuff like that. All of it or none of it. The in-between
is a just standard called all or nothing at all. That's what this comment reminds me of.
State that we're in right now is what's tearing this country apart. We cannot be in this in-between state. So again, a lot of this stuff these people are upset about, right? The people who are upset about Shiloh Hendrix raising so much money, again, is simply a product of the tribalism that we have seen from other minority groups become normalized, right? Carmelo Anthony. Look at Rodney Hinton. You got people trying to raise money for murderers, cop killers. Carmelo Anthony is not raising $500,000 because these people really believe that this was self-defense. Half of these people donating to Carmelo Anthony, they're not even smart enough to be able to articulate why, legally speaking, it's self-defense. This is why they have to make stuff up. They're raising money for Carmelo Anthony because he's a black teenager that killed a white teenager. White people got upset about it, and they see it as revenge for what happened with George Zimmerman, George Floyd, Kyle Rittenhouse.
It's raw and harsh, but these are facts.
Daniel Penny. This is why every time these people talk about Carmelo Anthony, they're not talking about how it was actually self-defense. They're not talking about that. What they're talking about, whoa, if Daniel Penny can raise such and such and such, if Kyle Rittenhouse can raise such and such and such, why can't Carmelo Anthony? Again, it's not about these people actually believing that Carmelo Anthony acted in self-defense. And that's why, I have to say BS to Mark Lamont Hill, pretending as if Carmelo Anthony, the people that are donating him, really believe.
Virtue signaling.
That he acted in self-defense. They don't believe he acted in self-defense. These people don't care about self-defense. I've actually donated to young black men that have acted in self-defense. Half of these race hustlers that came out of woodwork for Carmelo Anthony, they've never given money to any black person that acted in self-defense to defend their self-defense rights. They've never done that. They're only doing it in this situation, again, because of the racial dynamics. And if it wasn't for this situation, you don't have a Shiloh Hendricks. All the people that are upset with, Shiloh Hendricks raising so much money, well, you got to point the finger at Carmelo Anthony. Okay, because if the Carmelo Anthony situation doesn't happen, we have these people basically raising money to celebrate a murder, right? If you don't have that happening, then you don't have the Shiloh Hendricks. And again, don't try to sit here and try to tell me that the people that are giving money to Carmelo Anthony, they're giving it to him because they believe in self-defense. How do you explain Rodney Hinton? How do you explain the fact that you have people that are openly trying to raise?
This is another incident that happened just how many days ago now? Very sad. Very tragic. And again, it's the crowd funding tribal wars.
Money for a cold-blooded murderer, right? Just killed a random cop. And they're raising money. They're trying to raise over $100,000 for this man. How do you explain that? You think they're raising money for him because they believe that he's innocent? No, they're not raising money because they believe he's innocent. They're raising money because he killed a cop, a white cop. So, no, the Shiloh Hendricks and the Carmelo Anthony situation are not the same situation. I think the Carmelo Anthony situation, that fundraising is actually much worse. At least with, the white woman that said the N-word, nobody was harmed, right, in that video, right? Nobody was harmed. Nobody lost their life. Yeah, some feelings was hurt, and I don't necessarily agree with what she said. But if you're talking about what's worse, right? I got to say raising money for murder. I got to say raising money for cop killing. I think that's worse. I'm going
to go to Lily Gaddis and just ask you one more time. I mean, you've been so unashamedly proud of being a racist today, proud of using the N-word whenever you feel like it. You've had a bit of time to think about this. Is that how you want people to leave this panel debate, with thinking of you as a disgusting racist?
I don't really care what people think about me. As long as you care about what people think about you, you have no power and you lose your country. What I care about is freedom of speech. And if you're not allowed to say the most offensive things in this country, you do not have freedom of speech. I don't care what anybody says. So that's the main crux of this situation. That's what I care about with this situation. It is, we have lived for far too long in a country where you can have your life destroyed. And people say, oh, she doesn't need this money. Her life's destroyed, by the way. She'll never be able to get another job. She's got children to have to support. And I don't want to live in a country where you can say an inappropriate, rude thing, which, by the way, black people can say things to white people all the time and they never get canceled. There's no backlashing about this. I want to live in a country where people are allowed to say what they want unashamedly. And you will
well, go
not
on then,
have
say
to,
it. Say
you
the
will
N-
not have
Go on, say,
speech.
go on. Say the N-word. Go on.
No.
Hang on.
Invite. No. I don't want you to invite this woman to say a racially harmful term in front of me, because I'm the only on here. So if she says it, I'm the victim of it. So please don't invite her for ratings to call me the N-word, because that's basically what it's going to be. There's a bunch of white people up here, you and one on the left here, and to ask her
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
to say the N-word while I'm here is ridiculous. You would not sit here with a Jewish person and say, please use a Jewish slur in front of this Jewish. It's ridiculous. I understand you don't have any bad intent here. I understand what you're trying to do. But we already know she's racist, and I don't want to invite a racial harm to me.
I hear you, and I accept that.
We
and we'll
hear you,
leave it
Mark.
there.
Oh my
Thank you
goodness.
all very much.
Wow. That was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So do you guys see the hypocrisy here? This is what I'm talking about.
I see it.
When I tell you guys these people are all about power and control, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Mark Lamont Hill just lost his mind over this white woman potentially saying the N-word. She didn't say it, just being asked to say the N-word, right? And Piers definitely was asking her to say it for ratings, right? I definitely think Marks was right about that. He definitely was asking her to say it so that he could put in the title of the video that she said the N-word. So it's definitely for ratings. But Mark Lamont Hill, in his little meltdown over potentially being called a racial slur, in which, you know, she wasn't really calling him a racial slur. Her saying the word is not, you know, automatically mean is directed at him, okay? But regardless, he's mad about that, and then he turns around and calls Miron a racial slur, okay? Called him a racial slur. So how does that work?
That makes sense.
Why is it not okay for her to say a racial slur, but it's okay for Mark to say a racial slur? And this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. Rules for thee, not for me. It's about power. That's what it's about with these people. And that's what I can't stand.
That makes sense.
Is that they hide behind this moral high ground when it's not about morality. It's about power and control. You can agree or disagree with this woman, okay? And I'm not saying I agree with everything that she say. But one thing I can say is that she is not hiding on some moral high ground. She is not pretending that she is above everybody else morally, okay? She's telling you straight up who she is and what she's about.
Out in the open.
I'm not going to lie to you. I respect that. I respect people who are straight up and upfront when it comes to what they're about. Agree or disagree with it. It's much better to deal with people like that than to deal with people who pretend as if they're not about power and control, and that, well, I'm just about morality, right? I'm about equality. When you're not about equality, equality is a world in which Mark Lamont Hill can call Miron Gaines a racial slur, okay, and get away with it, and Lily Gaddis can call Mark Lamont Hill a racial slur and get away with it. That's equality, right? Myron should have been just as triggered as Mark Lamont Hill. Because Mark Lamont Hill actually calls somebody a racial slur. Mark Lamont Hill was not called a racial slur. But I guarantee you, Mark Lamont Hill will not be banned from this show. He's not going to be banned from the show, even though he called Miron Gaines a racial slur. He's not going to get banned. But if Lily Gaddis had called Mark Lamont Hill an N-word, actually said, like, you are an N-word or something like that directly, she would never be invited back on the show. She would never be invited back on the show. And that's the point, right? That's the point that a lot of people are trying to make about how this is not equality, right? The society that these people are trying to create is not a society where people are treated equally, because they don't really want equality. They don't want equality. They want equity, right? That's what they want. They want to be able to openly discriminate against white people, to have societal rules and norms that are to the detriment of white people, at the expense of white people, and white people shouldn't be allowed to say anything about it unless they're racist, right? That is essentially the type of society that they are trying to create. That's what they're trying to do. That's what it's about. It's all about power dynamics. It's a power game. And I just wish these people would be honest. Just be honest. Get off your moral high ground and just be honest about what you want. You want power. And that's okay. But just don't act like you're not the other side of the same coin. You are. You are the other side of the same coin. Okay? Just be honest about it. And if the honesty was there, I actually would respect it a lot more. I can't respect these people who, again, pretend to be on some moral high ground when they're not. They have no objection to using or calling people racial slurs. Mark Lamont Hill just called Miron Gaines a racial slur. And then while crying about potentially being called a racial slur, even though nobody called him a racial slur, and I don't even think she was going to do it. I don't think she was going to call him a racial slur. But her just using the word is well, there's an attack on me as a black person, right? You're calling me the N-word, right? You just say it. It's really embarrassing. It really is. Especially considering how this dude in this same rant called himself a racial slur, right? He called himself a racial slur, called himself the N-word. But he's triggered over a white woman possibly calling him the N-word, but he calls himself the N-word and then calls somebody else a racial slur, called himself the N-word. But he's triggered over a white woman possibly calling him the N-word, but he calls himself the N-word and then calls somebody else a racial slur. In response, somebody make it make sense. Somebody make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Again, unless you understand what this is really about. It's about power. Rules for thee, not for me. Mark Lamont Hill, he can call
That's the one.
Myron a racial slur. He can call himself a racial slur. But if a white woman calls him the N-word, it's time to boo-hoo, whine, and cry, act like a victim, right? This guy loses his mind. It only makes sense when you understand what it's really about. So again, this is why I try to tell people, I'm like, you can either have all of it or you can have none of it.
None of it.
This is why I say this all the time. You can have all of it or none of it. This in-between thing where, white people are not allowed to do things that other minorities are allowed to do, that's not going to work. It's not going to work in a society where the white population is declining. And at some point, white people will be minorities. And just logically speaking, based off the precedents that are being set by so-called minorities now, nobody should be surprised by what we're seeing. Nobody should be surprised.
No, don't be surprised.
I think that it was inevitable, right? It's inevitable that you're going to see a form of tribalism and collectivism that is going to develop amongst white people, right? And that, again, is a natural result of what's happening with these so-called minorities. And again, the collectivism that they engage in, where it's this white versus non-white thing that they got going on, this power struggle. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
Well, there you go. Succinctly, clearly put, with critical thinking applied, expressed way from Greg Foreman there. This collective tribal GiveSendGo, GoFundMe, crowdsourcing war is just brewing. I think we're going to get a lot more of this coming across our screens in the coming days, weeks, and months. So as I usually say, watch this space. And before I depart from the space, I'd just like to give you a quick word from our video sponsors, who are smalldebts.co.uk. If you happen to be based over this side of the Atlantic, anywhere in the UK, and you have any kind of issues getting money paid back to you, if you're owed money, if you've been scammed, or you just simply have a rent deposit that you need repatriated to your account from a landlord or estate agent, excuse me, or any other kind of financial issue where it involves sorting out a problem that involves your hard-earned, get in touch with smalldebts.co.uk. The information will be in the descriptions. That'll be smalldebts.co.uk, and they'll sort these issues out for you. They'll have your corner. So don't hesitate, look them up, and they'll be able to take care of your issue. Until we come back with a future update or catch me on my next video, I'd just like to say thank you for being here with myself, Onu Adye, here at Corner Speak. As per usual, be good, be safe, be creative. For now, I'm out.